That's a weird looking mask. Yes, it is. But it looks like it works. I'm pretty excited about this one. What I have here is one mask, and I'm going to show you how to turn it into up to 10 similar masks, made using common household materials, and of exactly the same filtration rating as the original. We're going to look at a few things in this video that I haven't seen anywhere else. That's the concept of multiplying a mask. We're going to look at how to make a simple but very effective exhale valve from a balloon, and how to get a plastic bottle to almost perfectly match the shape of your face. It's incredibly simple, and I think the masks that we make will be almost as good as the original. Alright, let's get started. First, wash your hands so you don't contaminate what you're going to make. Then, gather your materials. This is what you need, and it's not much, is it? And this stuff is optional, but it will make your life easier. Okay, so a mask isn't just a mask. What it is two things, a filter and a face seal. The filter catches viruses, and the face seal is what makes sure that the air goes through the filter before it gets to your mouth. And that's important, because if there are any tiny gaps, air will always take the path of least resistance. Now on our mask here, and this is a European P2, it's similar to an American N95, what you'll notice is that the mask makes a face seal with filtering material. All of this is filtering material, but you don't need all this to breathe through. We just need the minimum that you can breathe through, and that's about 6 to 10 pieces per mask. So that means if we cut up this mask, we can make 6 to 10 pieces of filtering material from it, and then we can improvise a face seal using common materials, and we're going to use a bottle. This is a 2-litre bottle with a flat, smooth surface near the lid. Cut the end off, and check that you've made a straight cut by putting it down on a flat surface. Bottle's looking alright, but it's not face-shaped yet, and we need this to be a very good match for the shape of your face. Now you can do this freehand, but it's quite difficult to tell where to cut, so we're going to use a technique that makes this a lot easier. Take a thin wire hoop and make it just a little wider than the bottle, or a lot wider if you've got a big nose like me. Now put the hoop just under your chin and push it down next to your nose and onto your cheeks. Now the hoop's face-shaped, but it's probably not circular anymore, so we go back to the bottle. Now we make the hoop circular, but it's probably not face-shaped anymore, so we go back to the face. And we go back and forth, until eventually we have this. You can see the nose, the cheeks, the chin. It's face-shaped, but it's also circular. So now we can trace the shape of our face onto the bottle, and this should give us a very good face fit. This inside corner on the nose is a real pain. I found the best way to cut it out was a small pair of scissors and many cuts with the very end of them. But any way you can find to cut it out is okay, just make sure that there are no cracks or jagged edges. Great. Let's test it. You should be able to put this onto your face and inhale just slightly. Now I can feel around here and there's no air coming in, and that's great. Usually masks are made of something soft, and it's the mask that conforms to the shape of your face. Now with this, we're trying to get as exact a match as we can, because actually it's the skin on your face which is going to provide the cushion and conforming seal, I suppose, to this bottle. Now before cutting up your commercial mask, I'd try wearing your bottle for a while, to see if you do find it comfortable enough to wear for long periods of time. Because if you don't, then don't cut up your mask. This was after wearing the bottle for an hour. It wasn't too bad. It was more irritating than painful, and certainly nothing like what healthcare providers go through in their multiple hour shifts. But obviously this mask is less comfortable than the original, especially over long periods of time. In some cases, I think this will have a better face seal than the original, so it's not too bad, but comfort is one of the areas that we're pushing here in order to get multiple masks out of a single one. There might be a better way to do this actually. I am thinking about it. And if you can think of a universal household material, impermeable to air, that gives a perfect but comfortable face seal, put it in the comments. I'd be really interested. We'll be putting some tape around the edge to make this a bit more comfortable, but first let's take a look at this exhale valve, and I'm quite pleased with this. But I warn you, it's very complicated, okay? So just pay attention while I'll run you through all the different steps, okay? Step 1, take your balloon and cut the end off where it starts to become narrow, and then put it on your bottle. And you're done. This is already a very good exhale valve. Balloons are perfect for this. When you breathe out, it makes a wide tube, and that's very easy to breathe through. But when you try to breathe back in, it instantly shuts off. Now, a really nice feature of balloons is that they're manufactured to lie flat, and so even when no air is sucking back in to deliberately shut this balloon, gravity will hang it down, and that fold should cut off the air. Now, if you find that's not happening, like in this instance, swap it for a different one, or pull it around on the bottle. Have the flat side facing towards the ground, and eventually you'll have something which is nice and floppy like this. This is absolutely ideal. Secret bonus feature of this mask, you can make a sort of trumpet noise. I know, can't do that with an N95. But if for some reason you don't want to do this, just breathe more softly and it won't make a noise. If you find you're inverting the balloon when you breathe in, you're kind of breathing in too hard. So breathe out softly, breathe in softly, and that should solve a lot of the problems you might have. Okay, that's the exhale valve. Now you've probably noticed by now, but cut plastic has quite sharp edges. So we're going to cover it with tape to make it a bit more comfortable. A tape edge doesn't sound like it would make a lot of difference, but actually it really makes this a lot more comfortable to wear. Now do this carefully, trying to smooth out the tape all the time and getting that top fold to really match the shape of the bottle. What you want is to create an airtight seal, and not at this stage introduce gaps which could let the air in. Small pleats on one side or the other are okay, but make sure that the edge is nice and smooth. And here's the inside corner of the nose causing trouble again. Put a bigger piece of tape on the left and smooth it over as well as you can. Then put a big piece of tape on the right, overlapping it in the middle. Smooth that over. And then put a very narrow piece of tape over that join between the two. Then check all the way around and make sure that everything's nice and smooth. Good. Put an elastic band around your balloon to make sure it's got a good seal and that it doesn't go anywhere. Now we come to the intense part of this, which is making the air intake, and for that, we need a filter, which means cutting up the mask. Now don't dive into this. If you cut up your mask into pieces that are too small, you won't be able to breathe through it, and they'll be useless. If you cut it up into pieces that are too big, you could have made more. Now I'd err on the side of too big, because those pieces will be possible to breathe through, whereas too small, they won't be. But let's do some testing. First, try breathing through a small area of the mask by pressing it on the end of the bottle. What you'll find is it's very difficult and you need a bigger filter area. So take a look at your mask and figure out how much you actually have to work with. And do we have to ignore this stitching at the edge? Well, no, actually, we can use it, because it's not stitching, it's heat sintering. This is where the mask sides have been melted together. You can't breathe through heat sintering, but it's not going to let unfiltered air through either, so we can basically just ignore it. This is sintering. Even this is heat sintering, and doesn't make a hole in the mask. But this is a problem. These staples go all the way through, and they've made holes that would let through unfiltered air. So this is a piece of the mask that we can't use. But we've got a lot of the mask that we can. Good. Now I've done a lot of testing of this, and I found that about a 41mm circle was about the minimum area of filter that I'm willing to recommend. And then you need a 3mm edge to allow it to be stuck onto the bottle. So how many of these pieces can we get out the mask? Well, if we use our minimum size, we seem to be able to get 4 on 2 sides, that's 8. But there's a lot of wasted space between these circles. So instead of using a circle, I'm going to divide this mask up with each piece bigger than this circle. And you can see I now get 5 out of one side. So with circles I get 8 filters from a mask, and with asymmetrical shapes I get 10. So after testing a mask, or maybe a couple of masks, we've got this chart. And this breaks down the area of filter size, how breathable they are, how many you can get out of a mask, and what activity you can expect to do with them. So bear in mind that this is a general guideline, and that this will vary from person to person. It could be affected by fitness, and this is for a P2 mask. If you use something like a P3, you'll have more resistance on breathing. So you might still have a bit of testing to do, but I hope this is very useful as a general guideline. I hope so anyway, because it took a while to put together. Alright, I want a mask that I could do some light activity in, like going to the shops, and that I've got no doubt that I can breathe very comfortably through. So I'm going to go with 40 square centimeter pieces, and with a mask like this, that means dividing it into 6. I draw around the template, and then I remove an area that's 3 mm inside that outline. The 3 mm edge means that you can tape over the top and secure the filter all the way around to the bottle. Put your air intake on the side, because if you put it on the top, some air might blow back through it into your eyes, and if you put it on the bottom, condensation might run down and soak it, and moisture damages commercial filters. And incidentally, this is why we made a separate air intake and exhale valve. If we were breathing out through the filter, it might concentrate 6 to 10 times the amount of moisture into one small area of mask, and I suspect that wouldn't be a good thing. But that should be a problem we avoid by having an exhale valve. And I've made a spine in the middle here, which should stop the filter bulging in under negative pressure. It's not too much of a problem if it does that, and it won't happen with smaller filter sizes, so this is optional. Once you've made your intake hole, if it's small enough, you might be able to hold the mask to it and test that you can breathe through. With a large hole like the one I've made, that's probably not possible, and you might just have to take a leap of faith. When you cut up the mask, cut one piece at a time so that if you have chosen the wrong size, you can change for the rest of the mask. Masks are often many layers, so if they're coming apart, put a little tape around the edge, and this will stop the inner one being torn away from the outer one when you breathe in. And when you're putting this tape on, do it quite carefully, one piece at a time, smooth it out. I find it helps to imagine that if you do create an air gap at this stage, it may let in a deadly pathogen. But, use whatever helps keep you focused. Go around the whole edge of the filter with tape, overlapping the pieces so that you don't get tiny gaps like this one. But if you do, cover it up. And there we go, looking really nice. You can see a very prominent crease there, which I'm sad I left, but I've checked, there's no air gap underneath it. Make some straps from your elastic bands, and adjust them until they're the right length. You want this to be tight enough that it doesn't move around on your face, and so that that face seal is always perfect, but not so tight that you can't wear this for as long as you need to. When you're all happy with that, use a piece of wire to secure the bands, and this will make sure they don't come off when you take off the mask. Now this is looking really good, but there is one last problem to fix, and it's to do with this. To protect the people around us, we're going to add a filter to the exhale valve, and this is something we actually need to do, because you might not know if you're sick. A significant proportion of people are completely asymptomatic, and even if you're going to show symptoms, they take a while to incubate. And before that, it's not just sneezing that transmits this, but even talking and breathing. We're just using the scraps of the bottle and a bit of cotton t-shirt. And if you notice that the cotton t-shirt wasn't in our material list, yeah, I know, I just thought of this now. Sorry. So this definitely won't filter like a P2 mask, but it will reduce the amount of droplets that we transmit while breathing, and that's going to be good for the people around us. This is actually a problem on even commercially made masks. If it has an exhale valve, it isn't filtering the air that you breathe out. Make sure your balloon still has enough space to hang down freely. I should probably have made my tube a little lower to give the balloon a bit more space. And now we're completely done. And I think this is quite a good looking mask. I mean, it's weird, for sure. But man, it seems to work. I'm very pleased with this, I do think it's so cool that we can get multiple masks out of a single one. And apart from the original commercial mask, we're basically just using trash that you might have around the house. And yes, inherently this mask is going to be less breathable and less comfortable than the original. But it has some positive features too. I think the face seal is likely to be better than the original. The filter rating will be just the same. The exhale valve is very good. And you can make multiple masks from a single one. I just think that's great. Now, obviously, this is an emergency measure, and probably only becomes useful when a supply of commercial masks is not available. So in some ways, I hope you don't have to use this, but if you do, I hope it's useful. I can think of one particularly useful situation for this platform. Some masks are marked NR for not reusable, and you're supposed to dispose of them after a single use. Now, in times of shortage, people either reuse these masks or wear them once and then have no mask. But with this platform, you could divide that mask into multiple masks, still use them once each and dispose of them safely, but have extended the use of that mask for multiple days. So I think that's very exciting too. Now, I bet a lot of you have been wondering why we're cutting up a mask at all to get our filter material. Why not cut up a HEPA filter panel or a vacuum cleaner bag? And that's a good question. I believe this is a good platform for any filter that you can put on it. The reason that I can't recommend other filters is because there are so many, and often they're made of things like fiberglass, which I've heard could even be dangerous when you cut and breathe through it. A mask is already something designed for respiratory use. So it's something that I feel comfortable recommending. But look, if you can find a different type of filter, you think it's safe, and you can avoid cutting up a mask, well, that's great news. So basically, I leave the choice of filter completely up to you. Just stay safe and make smart decisions, I guess. Now, when designing this mask, I obviously tried to make it as useful as possible and as safe as possible. But for any mask, there are some risks to avoid, and when you're manufacturing your own mask, you introduce the capacity for it to be significantly less effective than the original. So I want to run through some potential dangers so that you can keep yourself safe. Don't touch the intake or the exhale filter, as the virus can build up on them. Wash your hands before and after touching the mask so that you don't contaminate it, and it doesn't contaminate you. This mask relies on an excellent face seal and a very effective exhale valve, and that means that there's a danger of suffocation if the filter becomes clogged somehow. Now, I can't think how that would happen suddenly, but it is something to be aware of, and if you're someone who can't immediately take this off if you become dizzy, then you shouldn't be wearing this mask, so I don't recommend it to children or the very elderly. Remember that air isn't the only vector of transmission. The virus can live on surfaces, transfer on hands, and enter the body through your nose, mouth, and eyes. Tape and other materials can deteriorate over time, so check every area of tape before wearing the mask, with clean hands obviously, to make sure that no gaps have developed. And finally, don't be overconfident wearing your mask. Remember that no mask works 100%, and one with homemade modifications could be significantly less effective. Ultimately, isolation is going to keep you a lot more safe than wearing a mask in public. So bear all these risks in mind and try to avoid them, but don't be disheartened by them either. In general, wearing a mask should help protect you and the people around you, and that's a great thing. Alright, that's it. That's how you can turn one mask into 10. I hope some of this was useful to you, and you can subscribe to the channel if you're interested, but I'm not sure what the next video will be. I've been trying to tell people to wear masks for a few months because it felt like something that needed doing. And now the world is more or less wearing masks, which is great. And I'm really happy about it. So I don't know. I don't know what the next thing is. If I can think of something useful, then maybe I'll make a video on it. Or maybe it'll be something a bit different, just on something that interests me. Either way, I appreciate the support from the people who've been very kind to me online, so thank you. And I hope you've found something useful in these videos. Alright, that's it. Stay safe, everyone. Take care.